Hey, how's it going, Guardians? There are 7 days left until Edge of Fate, and I am now realizing that timer is for me. There's 7 days left for me. For you guys, there should be 6 days when this goes live. Um, but we're gonna pretend that that has been correct the whole time. So forgive me for bringing you back to the past and dating this episode. Today we're going to go ahead and take a look at Warlock exotics. We did Hunters yesterday, and as a Hunter main, the grass is always greener on the other side, and I am jealous of your class and your exotics, so this is the Brat episode because all of your stuff is so much better than Hunters. And while that might be a joke to some of you, I think it's true the majority of the time. There's at least a lot more exotics that are contending for this list than I think Hunter has. Now, once again, this list is for endgame content. We're talking Legend difficulty plus into GMs, into contest raids. And I'm going to take into account some of the Edge of Fate stuff as it comes to me. I did this list, after the changes were announced, but there wasn't a bunch of stuff that I think is super relevant for what's going to break the ceiling on Warlock power. So until we actually get into the expansion and can test out some of the changes and see how they really feel with the new stat system and everything, this is going to be the list going forward. Just like yesterday, we are doing 3 honorable mentions to start us off, so let's go ahead and take a look at those. Our first honorable mention is going to be Necrotic Grips. These things kill, they slay. When you do damage with a melee, and this can be a ranged melee, a powered melee, or a regular melee, or a glaive melee, you will poison the targets that you hit. Those targets will take damage over time, so the longer the target's poisoned, the more they're going to take. If you kill the enemy while they are poisoned, they will explode and spread that poison to other nearby enemies. If you don't have Necrotic Grips yet, you can grab them by getting Beyond Light and then focusing them from Rahul. Now, a hidden part of this exotic is that it works with Weapons of Sorrow. I say hidden, most people know this at this point, but if you did not know, these work with any weapon that is considered a Weapon of Sorrow, and those are Thorn, Necrochasm, Osteostriga, and Touch of Malice. All of those weapons have a component that causes damage over time effect, and when you're using Necrotic Grips, that is considered to be the same poison effect. Killing an enemy that is affected by that poison effect will also spread Necrotic's poison to nearby enemies. Even with the shift over to Prismatic, there is a Prismatic class item slot that can be Necrotics. It doesn't scale up the damage, so it is a little bit worse in my opinion. I think regular Necrotics is actually better than that piece. Necrotic still maintains a very good damage over time effect that is great for single targets and for ad clear. This is really flexible, even scales up into endgame. The only issue is it doesn't really build into a whole class in the way that some of these other ones will. You don't really get a 3.0 effect. If we had gotten the poison subclass that we've been waiting for, I'm sure this would work with that, but here we are, still waiting for corruption. My second honorable mention might be a little bit controversial, but I think this is an honorable mention in good faith, right? This is Getaway Artist. Now, Getaway Artist has a place on Prismatic right now. There is a great build where you can run Getaway Artist with Bleak Watchers, and you can spawn Bleak Watcher and the Getaway Artist Arc Soul at the same time. Is it a bad build? No, it's a great build. Very fun to play, very effective into endgame. It builds up both sides of your Transcendence meter, which is kind of, I think, the main selling point is getting your Transcendence up pretty consistently off this cooldown. As long as you're getting kills to proc Devour, you can keep this up. But it does kind of fall off if you're not getting the kills, if you're not, keeping Devour up, or even if you just want to actually use your grenade, because Warlock has a lot of good grenades on Prismatic. Healing grenades, Vortex grenades, regular Storm grenades, even Cold Snaps are really great. The only thing that's kind of lacking of the grenade kit is Threadlings, and even then they're not bad. So the opportunity cost of running Getaway Artists, not running a class item, not running some of the other more powerful exotics that you have the option of running, takes away a little bit from your build crafting. On top of that, you are committing to dropping your Bleak Watcher at your feet instead of being able to throw it past enemies or deeper further away from you to freeze enemies in safer locations, as well as you're just giving up your grenade entirely. As well as I just think there's some more potent things that you can do and ways to build to get the same effect that Getaway Artist will give you. Namely, like one of the main convenient things you can do with this is elemental honing, but you really can cover that with just grenade, melee, super, 3 weapons. You have enough to do honing without needing to use Getaway Artist on top of that. Totally great. Works great into endgame. Even on arc builds, I have an arc build that I like that uses Getaway Artist. This is definitely a really good exotic, but the competition is just that fierce for Warlock exotics in general. Our last honorable mention is basically required in any endgame content that's doing raids or dungeons, in contest mode, or anything where your ammo is really restricted, and that's Cenotaph. Cenotaph is not inherently a powerful thing. It doesn't really make you a build. However, the effect of being able to hit a target with a trace rifle and then spawn heavy for your entire team, and then green for you. But if your teammate's running Aeons, then they can spawn you a heavy brick and you can spawn them a heavy brick, and everybody else gets 2 heavy bricks. So good synergy there. It is just old reliable. You're running a raid encounter. You need heavy ammo. You put one person on Cenotaph. They tag the one target that's always in the encounter that is a yellow bar that spawns heavy when you tag them with Cenotaph. And you fill up before the phase, and then you just switch off again. Now, if we go into contest mode and not swap becomes more standard, Cenotaph might lose a little bit of places, but I'm sure plenty of people are just going to choose to run it the entire time. Its only competition is going to be Speaker's Sight for a support Warlock. So you're working between this and Speaker's Sight most of the time, but this is something that you usually will swap to and then swap off. You're not really using it for damage, and in a lot of Nightfalls, people aren't running Cenotaph anymore because they're just more potent builds now. And I also think for this and Aeons, going into the new ammo system where we can consistently see how close we are to spawning heavy, as well as abilities contributing to the bar, which they haven't if you don't know. Ammo finders do not work with abilities currently in the live game. They only work on weapon kills. So the progress bar being increased by abilities in Edge of Fate for heavy ammo is a big boost to the heavy economy that I don't think most people actually understand the implications of. That said, Cenotaph is probably still going to have a place just in really busy encounters where you're really trying to maximize your damage phase time and minimize your time mechanics. So it is still going to be an honorable mention. Now, our first entry in our main top 10 list here is from our base game exotics, Verity's Brow. Verity's is a grenade-based exotic that can work on any subclass and any class. Its main perk is Fourth Magic, where weapon final blows that match the element of your grenade grant you a stacking buff. This buff, through every stack, will increase how much grenade damage you do. We're talking 40 to 100% at max stacks. It works on a timer system like Worm Gods, so once you fill up the bar, each section will drain one after the other. The higher your stacks, the faster it will decay, and once it gets to the lower stacks, they'll last about 11 seconds on the last 2. So you have a pretty long time if you stack this up before it actually falls off, and you're maintaining that at least 40% damage buff very consistently. In addition, one of the effects that Death Throws got added to it was while you have Death Throws active and are maintaining that buff, you get faster grenade cooldown. That's just added on top of your regular recharge, and for some of the faster charging grenades, that can cut off more than half the time. Finally, the other main thing that Verity's does is only on the main exotic and not on the class item version, which is when you have Death Throws and you throw a grenade, all of your nearby teammates get plus 10,000% grenade regen for about 5 or 6 seconds. Once they are chucking all their grenades and stuff and it wears off, you have your own buff, it's separate. But if you have a second person who's also running Verities, you can chain it back and forth, so you're giving each other infinite grenade uptime, and you can chain that to your whole team. So for things like Atheon, double Verities is a pretty classic maneuver, and on most raids, it is a thing that you can see to make up damage, kind of like how we used to do fusion grenades with Starfire Protocol. You could do that with Verities as long as you have 2 people with Verities on, and they get a damage increase on top of that. Overall, I think Verities is one of the most flexible exotics in the game. So once we get into Edge of Fate, this will stack multiplicatively with 200 grenade stat, giving you well over 3 times damage. Next up is another Warlock classic. This is Sunbracers. If you have not played Solar Warlock since the final shape and Sunbracers got nerfed, let me tell you, Sunbracers are not dead. Yes, they only get 4 grenades instead of 5 grenades. But in case you forgot how strong solar grenades are with Touch of Flame, let me remind you that 1 of them is enough to stop an entire doorway from spawning an endgame. Now 4 of those can stack on top of each other and ignite bosses for free, or elites or champions. And if you're just trying to clear ads, you can still blanket the map with this, and then you just get a kill while in the air, and you have your melee back and you can do it again. It is almost inconsequential that you're missing 1 grenade on this. And I think going into, with the artifact having some solar bonuses, Sunbracers are going to be a great pick in the Legendary campaign and probably in the Day 1 raid again. In case you don't know what Sunbracers do, all you have to do is get a solar melee kill and you will get unlimited charges, quote unquote, of the solar grenade on solar. The solar grenade is the one that makes a big bubble of solar damage. And if you have Touch of Flame equipped, it shoots out little blobs that do extra damage. This duration of the buff will last you enough to throw 4 grenades. So essentially every melee kill, you get 4 grenades. And with Incinerator Snap being an option, you can cause an ignition with that, and if the ignition gets a kill, that counts for you proccing Sunbracers as well. This has been one of the best Warlock exotics pretty much ever since the game came out, and it continues to be an absolute menace. You just can't play Prismatic with this. Third on the list is Sanguine Alchemy. This, if you are paying any attention to the meta, is kind of ubiquitous right now. I think it's a little bit cheesy to use this because a lot of people are popping well and then changing classes to get the damage buff on different elements. I think that's kind of lame, but it works, so it is still one of the best exotics in the game. For anybody who doesn't know, Sanguine Alchemy is a rift-based exotic. It does also work with Well of Radiance because Well counts as a rift. While you are in a rift, you can hit targets to mark them. Marked targets will take 10% more damage from you. As well, if you hit an enemy with a weapon that matches your super while in your Well or Rift, you will get surges for that weapon. These surges will be 4x surges, so it'll be 25% bonus damage for whatever element weapon you are using and super. And as a little extra bonus, if you are in a rift, any kills you get while in the rift will extend the duration of your rift. Mainly, people are using this to pop well down, switch to whatever element they want to use, and then get 25% and 10% bonus damage on their weapon of choice. It stacks with pretty much everything in the game, so it's a no-brainer. This is what you run in a lot of DPS scenarios right now, and since it doesn't seem to be getting nerfed in a significant way going into the expansion, this is still something to keep around and be aware of. Even in the worst-case scenario where the 10-second window is super detrimental to your damage phase, you can just use this and then use Heathens because Heathens is solar. So at the end of the day, it's not the worst-case scenario. Now we're going to move up to our first Forsaken exotic. This is Controverse Hold. For anybody who doesn't have this, you can pick it up by getting the Forsaken pack and then getting random rolled exotics. Controverse Hold are a Void exotic. You can only use it on the Void subclass, and it is based on the aspect Chaos Accelerant, which lets you charge up your Void grenades to get some bonus effects. The perk for Controverse Hold is while you are charging that grenade, you will get damage resistance, and dealing damage with that grenade will give you cooldown back. For any of your grenades that are a one-off grenade, like Magnetic or Scatter Grenade, you will get about half your grenade back in that recharge period. If you are using a Vortex Grenade and the enemy stays in the field long enough to take the damage, they will proc it at least twice and get you the full charge back. So that's pretty much all this exotic does. It is an uptime exotic. But for anybody who has ever used Chaos Accelerant Vortex Grenades, you will know they are disgusting. Chaos Accelerant Vortex Grenades with Echo of Remnants creates these long-lasting vortex grenades that can do up to 2/3 the damage of a Nova Bomb, just as your grenade ability. And if you tag a boss with this, or a group of ads that just lives long enough to take the damage twice, or an enemy walks into the field, you'll get the whole thing back, Devour or not. Now you are on Void, so of course you will probably have Devour on, meaning if you get one tag with this and then a kill or two, you'll have another supercharged vortex grenade. In addition, one of the really fun buffs that Warlock got recently was with Magnetic Grenade, you convert that into Handheld Supernova, which is a short-range, like, shotgun blast of projectiles. And it's recently been increased from 5 to 9 projectiles, and they've had their damage rebalanced, so it is a disgusting burst damage option. Hitting with that will get you half of that back, and of course, you're playing with Devour, and probably Firepower, some extra orbs, Innervation, you can get some cooldown back from that. This is an amazing uptime exotic. It is very consistent. It has been consistent from the very beginning, and it is still, to this day, a reliable pick in endgame content. For our next pick, we're going to go with something a bit more hip, something that I've enjoyed since I started playing the game again back in Shadowkeep. I got this originally, I guess, when Forsaken came out, and I stopped playing the game. I came back in Shadowkeep and had them, and I was like, oh, this will be fun, and it was great. That's right, it's Geomag Stabilizers. Another Forsaken exotic. This is for Chaos Reach. All it does is, while you are dealing damage with Chaos Reach, it gives you energy back, so this will double the duration of your super. And your Ionic Traces, when you pick them up, will give you 7% super energy right now for the rest of this week. Once we get into the expansion, they'll give you 4% super energy. But don't tell Bungie I told you this. If you have 100 super stat, you should get 50% more energy off that 4%, so you should be getting 6% per Ionic Trace, which means you're getting nerfed by 1%, which is all but inconsequential with this thing because it is currently disgusting. Now, on top of that, you are also going to get a buff where you can top off your bolt charge from 5 to 10 in like a second of sprinting, a second and a half of sprinting. So that's a nice touch. We're going to be able to use that with the fragment that when you pick up Ionic Traces, you get bolt charge. Dealing damage gives you stacks of bolt charge as well. So Warlock already has really high uptime on abilities on this class. And if you're running Arc Souls, you can trigger bolt charge with the Arc Soul. So just being able to sprint to top that off and then discharge it with Arc Souls pretty strong, and you are going to continue to get a very strong super out of this as well. Skipping ahead to Lightfall, we get a surprisingly strong exotic for Strand here with Swarmers. Now, Swarmers are very, very simple. They make your Tangles spawn Threadlings, and they make your Threadlings unravel. While that does sound simple and not very crazy, with the Thread of Evolution on Strand Warlock, or any Strand class, but we're talking about Strand Warlock right now, you will get 33% more damage per Threadling. And in our Strand damage testing, Threadlings hit pretty hard. A Threadling grenade with Thread of Evolution hits harder than Storm grenades. The Unravel's what really is strong here, because that means when the Threadlings hit a target, and this is not just the Tangle Threadlings, this is any Threadling you make, you cause them to be unraveled, which is basically a poison damage over time. It will spread among all the enemies that are in an area. Every time it triggers, it will spread to new enemies or reproc on the same enemy, and it just adds more damage to the damage you're doing at all times. And on top of that, it makes it so that when they die, they can spawn more Tangles. In addition, with the changes to Weaver's Call giving you more Threadlings, and Strand Warlock just having so many fragments that spawn more Threadlings, as well as the Wander, which powers up your Tangles to suspend, you can be very flexible with throwing out Tangles to suspend and then unravel and get the damage with Threadlings, and then you can spawn additional Threadlings from the kills that you're getting with your Threadlings, and they become kind of self-sufficient at some point. This is the peak of the minion fantasy, the Necromancer build. Swarmers just generate so much extra damage and value for the Threadlings you're running in that kind of build that they are still very good into endgame, and I think these are really fun, and if you're using Strand Warlock, this is probably what you're taking over Metaiodoxia. The Witch Queen brought with it two very strong exotics over its year for Warlock. One of those is Osmiomancy Gloves. This came with the launch of the Witch Queen, and you'll need the Witch Queen to get these. They are a stasis-based exotic for Cold Snap grenades. They used to be used with Bleak Watchers, but that's kind of been overtaken in its field. So we're going to talk about using these with actual Cold Snaps, which is how I've preferred to use them since launch. When you are using Cold Snap grenades, you get a second charge. Really cool for PvP if that's what you're doing, and just in general, if you are letting it overcharge, you're not using them off cooldown, you can overcharge this, get extra energy back and up to those two grenades, or if you're in a panic, you can freeze two groups at once. And for every hit they deal, you get energy back. If you direct impact a target, that counts as a hit. If it hits multiple enemies in one burst of the freeze before it chains, those each individually count as their own hit. In general, if you throw this into a group of adds, if you hit about 5 adds, like we're talking Thrall and Acolytes, you'll get a charge back. If you hit one champion with the direct impact and freeze it, you will get the whole charge back. If it shatters and then it gets refrozen by the grenade while it's traveling, which does happen, you can get more than one charge back. The main benefit of using Cold Snap over using the turret, in my opinion, is Osmiomancy is instant value, and it also targets what you want it to target when you need it to target it. There have been times where we're using stasis turrets and they don't target the overload champion, or they don't target the enemy that's like attacking me that I wish it would target. Osmiomancy Gloves lets me directly target that enemy, freeze them, and then of course shatter them. It does plenty of damage with shattering, and getting the whole cooldown back for that means there's infinite uptime on this as well, without having to invest in headstone or anything like that. You can be very precise with what you want to hit with this, and you can be very aggressive with this. Our second Witch Queen exotic on the list is going to be Fallen Sunstar. This is for Arc subclasses, and you can get value out of it on Prismatic as well, but this is much more Arc focused. With Fallen Sunstar equipped, while you pick up Ionic Traces, they will grant you double the ability energy. Normally they're about 15%, this will get you 30% to your abilities. A little bit less for class abilities, but don't worry about that, it's close enough. In addition, whenever you pick up an Ionic Trace, all your nearby teammates will also get the Ionic Trace value. They're going to get the base value, so they're going to get 10 to 15% on their abilities, but that's still significantly more than they would get with nothing. If you are playing Arc Warlock, you are taking Electrostatic Mind, which means you are making Ionic Traces, and on your kills on jolted targets or with abilities, you are making 1, 2, 3 of these at a time. So you can go in for a Lightning Slide and Lightning Slide a group of enemies and get 2 charges out of that, which will get you 60% of your melee back, just for free. That's not even including if you're including Jolt in other places on your club class. If you're getting grenade kills, Arc Souls will make Ionic Traces that will feed back into this, or if you're using the new turret, that will also feed back into this, the Ionic Sentry. There are a lot of Arc builds that benefit from this. Ionic Traces are already one of the most broken things that Arc has access to, and Warlock is the best at exploiting them. So this just amplifies that even further. If you want to spam abilities, this is the one to play. Our final two exotics are going to be from the final shape, and if you've been playing recently, you can probably guess what they are. Starting us off here is going to be Speaker's Sight. Yes, you have to own the final shape to get this. You can finish the campaign and pick it up, or pick it up from Rahul. This exotic has changed how Warlock plays in raids and dungeons, and almost anything that you want to be not dying in. I don't know if this was the best thing to give to Warlock because it has just locked them into being the support even harder than before. This exotic makes it so that when you throw your healing grenade, it now becomes a healing turret. In addition, healing teammates will just spawn orbs. If you want to be the heal bot for your team, this is the exotic to run. If you're going to be running endgame content, you pretty much have to run Speaker's Sight at some point. Being in a Well of Radiance is no longer strong enough to keep your team alive in contest mode, so you're running Well of Radiance and this thing to add healing on top. So they kind of fixed Well of Radiance, and in order to fix the problem they were creating by nerfing Well of Radiance, they made Warlock even more devoted to healing. Instead of where we used to be running Sunbracers and getting to throw solar grenades and be aggressive, and we'd use Well for damage just as an extra bonus, now you're locked into Speaker's Sight and Well at the same time. So I'm kind of mad this came out. This would have been really cool, I think, on another class and give them something to do that's supportive. So I am sorry, all the Warlock players, for you having to run Speaker's Sight and Well. It's going to continue. Our final exotic on this list is going to be Rhymecoat Raiment. This is from episode Revenant, so you need the final shape to go ahead and get this. This is the Stasis Turret exotic now that it's come out. Originally, there was a little bit of debate. Is this going to be good? Is this going to be not as good as having two turrets? The consensus is in. This is just the best Stasis exotic in the game, pretty much. I still prefer Osmio because I prefer the fluidity of playing Stasis with Ice Flare bolts and things like that. However, Rhymecoat is undeniably the more convenient, the more consistent version of that, where you can throw this turret down, you can break the crystals it spawns because it now spawns crystals around it. That will proc Whisper of Shards, so you can have 100% uptime on the turret, or even better, where you can have multiple up at the same time. This will auto-target enemies, it has increased range, it freezes faster, and it creates a storm underneath it. And when you stand in that storm, it gives basically all of your weapons chill clip, and it will freeze everything in 2 hits of the crystals that spawn from that. By design, this might be one of the craziest exotics to buff a already standout piece of equipment. Like, Bleak Watcher was already the standout piece of artillery for Stasis Warlocks, and going into Prismatic, it was the representative of the class. Now, I've always been of the opinion that I think Ice Flare Bolts is the stronger fragment on its own. As an individual piece, I always thought Ice Flare was more interesting, more fun to play with. But Bleak Watcher has completely taken over everybody's desire to play Stasis Warlock because it is such consistent, strong value. And I'm not going to deny that it is an excessively strong ability. So, yeah, they went out and they're like, yeah, what if we took Bleak Watcher, made it stronger, and gave all your weapons chill clip at the same time in one exotic? And somebody said, yeah, that sounds pretty good. Let's do that. I don't know. I feel like maybe you could have kept the stasis crystals and the upgraded turret, and that would have been a really strong exotic on its own. And then somebody else could have gotten the stasis storm thing with chill clip. Maybe a Titan could have gotten that to build into weapons a little bit more. But, man, this thing is goated. These new Warlock exotics are really crazy. Like, all of them. Even Metaidoxia is not in this list. That was also a really strong exotic. So maybe the grass is always greener on the other side, but I've played my fair share of Warlock. These are crazy exotics. There are a ton more exotics that are still crazy on Warlock, but I think these are some of the most consistent, most powerful options you have to go into endgame and trivialize anything. You could run 3 of each of these in a GM, and you'll have a really great time, I think. You know, taking 3 Rhymecoats sounds disgusting. Taking 3 Speaker Sights is disgusting. So, Warlocks, how do you do it? How do you convince Bungie to keep giving you better and better exotics when your year 1 exotics that haven't been changed and have only been nerfed are still top of the meta? Like, what's up with that? What are you feeding them? I'm only asking because I need to do the same thing for Hunter, because Hunter needs some of this stuff, man. I'm out here running Prismatic Hunter just so I can run Verities and Syntheseps. Why does Hunter not have a Verity or Syntheseps equivalent on its regular class? Why am I running Frosties for my class neutral exotic? Hunter rage aside, Warlocks, you are eating good. I hope you all enjoyed this list of exotics. Like I said, there are plenty of other Warlock exotics that could be on this list. This could just be the list of bad Warlock exotics, and it would probably be like 5 or 6 exotics. Going into the final shape, I want you to keep an eye on Prometheum Spur, and I want you to keep an eye on Starfire Protocol. Those look like they're going to be getting some interesting changes. Keep an eye on Geomags. The nerf shouldn't be as bad as it sounds. Rhymecoat and Osmio are getting slightly nerfed because they're going to be anti-overload instead of unstop. So they're not going to be doing double duty anymore, which is disappointing. I still hate that that's a thing, but that is the world that we are living in. Tomorrow, everybody, we're going to be doing Titan Exotics, so I look forward to catching you there. After that, we're going to do subclasses and then builds. So I know a lot of people have been interested in like what builds we should be talking about for Etch of Fate. So I will do those, and we're going to be looking at the artifact and including a little bit of that in that. So they're going to be mostly for getting into a legend campaign and getting through that first week. And then once we get through that first week, we'll talk about, builds using the raid weapons, the raid exotic, the new exotics, whatever else we happen to find that Bungie's been hiding from us. We'll incorporate all of that into builds, a week or two into the expansion. Fellow Warlock players, let me know what you are running. As long as it is not Well of Radiance, I want to know what you're doing. I would love to get some more Warlock builds to play. I experiment a lot with all the classes, so I have played pretty much every exotic I could. I tried Prometheum Spur. That thing sucks. But I will see you all again very, very soon.